Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Castor, I want to go to the document that started it all, the August 12th whistleblower complaint. Bullet point 1 on page 1 of the whistleblower's complaint, he says this: over the past 4 months, more than half a dozen U.S. officials have informed me of the various facts related to this effort. Mr. Castor, who are these half a dozen U.S. officials?
We don't know.
We don't know, do we? We had no chance to know for sure who these people were because we never got to talk to the whistleblower. Is that right, Mr. Castor?
That's right.
We needed to talk to the guy who started it all. We needed to talk to him to figure out who these more than half a dozen people were who formed the basis of his complaint, and we never got to. Adam Schiff's staff got to. Adam Schiff knows who he is, but we don't get to know, and therefore we don't get to know the original people, the 6 people who formed the basis of this entire thing we've been going through now for 3 months. But we did talk to 17 people, right, Mr. Castor?
That's right.
17 depositions, and you were in every single one. You were the lawyer doing the work for the Republicans in every single one. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And there's one witness who they relied on and built their report around. One witness. Who would that witness be? As I read their report, it's obviously one witness. Who's that witness, Mr.
Ambassador
Castor?
Sondland.
Ambassador Sondland. I think you said earlier his name was mentioned, I don't know, what did you say?
611 times.
611 times. More than Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, the guy who was on the call. More than Ambassador Taylor, their first witness, their star witness, the very first hearing in the Intelligence Committee. They relied on Sondland, not the whistleblower, not the more than half a dozen people who informed the whistleblower. They relied on Ambassador Sondland. Why'd they pick Sondland, Mr. Castor?
That's probably the best they got.
Because that's the best they got. The guy who had to file an addendum to his testimony, the guy that had to file the clarification, the guy who said 2 weeks ago, sitting in the same chair you're sitting in, Mr. Castor, in his 23-page opening statement, he said this: unless President Zelensky announces an investigation into Burisma and the Bidens, there would be no call with President Trump, there'd be no meeting with President Trump, there'd be no security assistance money going to Ukraine. That's what Ambassador Sondland said. Mr. Castor, was there an announcement by President Zelensky about investigating the Bidens or Burisma?
No.
No announcement?
No.
Did President Zelensky get a call from President Trump?
Yes.
Did President Zelensky get a meeting with President Trump?
Yes.
Did President Zelensky get the money from the United States?
Yes.
They got the call on July 25th. They got the money on September 11th. They got the meeting on September 25th. Is that right?
Yes.
But the guy who said none of that was going to happen is the guy they build their case around.
Yes.
Is that right, Mr. Sondland?
Yep.
Let me go to one other thing they built their case around. They built their case around a lot of hearsay, didn't they? And the best example of the hearsay, surprisingly enough, is Ambassador Sondland. It's amazing. They built their case around this ambassador, and they built their case around hearsay, and the best example of both is Mr. Sondland, Ambassador Sondland, because he filed his addendum, his clarification, where he says this. We read this a couple weeks ago. We pointed this out a couple weeks ago. He says this in bullet point number 2. In his clarification, he says, Ambassador Taylor recalls that Mr. Morrison told Ambassador Taylor that I told Mr. Morrison that I conveyed this message to Mr. Yarmouk on a September 1st, 2019 in connection with Vice President Pence's visit to Warsaw and a meeting with President Zelensky. That's his clarification. Amazing. 6 people, as I said before, having 4 conversations in one sentence. Ambassador Taylor recalls that Mr. Morrison told Ambassador Taylor that I told Mr. Morrison that I conveyed this message to Mr. Yarmouk on September 1st, 2019 in connection with Vice President Pence's visit to Warsaw and a meeting with President Zelensky. That's the clarification. That's their star witness who they built their case around. So-and-so tells so-and-so what somebody said to someone else, and there you have it. That's their case. They forget the 4 key facts. They forget the fact that we have the call transcript and there was no quid pro quo. They forget the fact the 2 guys on the call, President Trump and President Zelensky, have said repeatedly there was no pressure, no linkage, no pushing. They forget the fact Ukraine didn't even know aid was held at the time of the call. And they forget the fact, most important, they did nothing to get the aid released, no announcement of any type of investigation whatsoever. They forget all that, those key facts. And they build their case around the guy who had to clarify his testimony with that amazing sentence. Mr. Goldman. Mr. Goldman, did the Democrats publish phone records of the president's attorney?
Mr. Giuliani, yes.
Did the Democrats publish phone records of a member of the press?
Yes, who was also involved in this.
Did the Democrats publish phone records of a member of Congress?
Yes, who was talking to people involved.
Did the Democrats, does that member of Congress also happens to be your boss's political opponent that those phone records were published of? So the Democrats, they run this kind of investigation, ignoring the facts, not letting the whistleblower come in, and therefore not letting us know if we've talked to the more than half a dozen original sources for the whistleblower's complaint in the first place. The guy who has to file an addendum with that clarification sentence, but one thing they did do in their report is they published the phone records of the president's personal lawyer, the phone records of a member of the press, and the phone records of the chairman of the Intelligence Committee's political opponent, Representative Nunes. That's what these guys did, and that's their effort to impeach the President of the United States 11 months before an election.
Gentleman's time has expired.